Yo, what's good, y'all? It's your boy Brody. Thank y'all, as always, for tapping into Broadcast Wrestling. Hope everybody's doing good on this Sunday. It's been a long week for me, but I can't complain too much. I'm still here. I'm blessed to be here. So I hope y'all are feeling the exact same. And today's edition, I want to do something a little different. First, I want to briefly touch on Adam Copeland jump into AEW. He officially made his debut last weekend at what pay-per-view was? I don't even know, to be honest with you. They've had so many different pay-per-views for the last 2 or 3 months, but he jumped ship from WWE. He's now in AEW, and I'm excited for him. I think this is good for him. It's a new chapter. It's a new start. And honestly, I think it's good for someone who's been around the WWE scene so long like Edge has to be able to go to a new place, interact with new people, have a fresh coat of paint, and plus he gets to go against Christian, and I'm very excited about that, as I think that was the last real thing that he had to do on his comeback tour, and now that he's done that, things are looking up, man. So, Ed, shout out to you for going to AEW. That's the first thing. The second thing, and like I said, today's episode is probably going to be really, really brief, honestly, just because of all that has been going on in my day-to-day life, and talk about some housekeeping as well. And matter of fact, let's get to the housekeeping right now, actually. So today is the last official, just straight-up Sunday episode of Broadcast Wrestling. Going forward now, I'm trying to put more emphasis on the YouTube channel, and with that means that I will be putting out more content just straight up on the YouTube channel, not necessarily a week-to-week podcast, because I think that a lot of different areas of wrestling that I want to explore, and there's different models of video and podcasts and all that I want to do. So that is what I'm going to do, and I'm really going to focus more so on superstar profiles, a few recaps, stuff like that, because I think that doing a podcast from week to week in a lot of ways has its pros and its cons. The biggest pro is that I'm able to talk to y'all, get things out there to y'all on a shared day, and y'all know, okay, boom, Sunday, Brody, go be on Broadcast Wrestling. Let's see what we talk about. However, the biggest con to that is, honestly, if you do a week-to-week podcast, oftentimes you find yourself talking about week-to-week activities. And that's something that I don't want this podcast to be, in all honesty. I didn't want it to be a thing where we're talking about week-to-week things. I wanted it to be more so about me showcasing different areas of wrestling that kept me hooked, whether it's right now, since I've been getting back into it pretty heavy, or if it was from when I was a kid, or even beyond. So going forward, just be on the lookout. Yeah, we'll still get updates on Instagram saying when I put out videos or when I'm going to put up something, but things are definitely going to change, and I'm really excited about what the future holds. And I'm taking all requests too, so if there's a particular wrestler, particular feud, please send them my way. Wrestling-wise, I'm only going to showcase a year, so, keep it simple, keep it light, just a year. We'll profile a wrestler, say everything that they've done during that year, talk about it, and talk about the changes throughout that year, or a specific run if the run was short. It really is case by case, but still, just keep it light, keep it simple, not keep it too crazy. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the future. I think it gives me more opportunity to give y'all more diverse content. So that is a housekeeping item for today, and I'm going to put up a tweet, probably pin it. Just take a request, anybody that got something they want to know about, anybody that got something they want a black dude to review, because I think we need more of that in the wrestling space, of just black dudes reviewing stuff. And that's what I'm going to do. So thank y'all for being patient with me with that. And in all honesty, this sort of change, this shift, was inspired by what it is I'm going to talk about today. And that is the new Netflix documentary, The Wrestlers, which dropped on Netflix a few weeks ago. And it is an excellent documentary. It was it was the production crew. I think the director is the same director that directed Last Chance U, the Cheerleaders, some other sports docuseries sorts of shows that's on Netflix. And Last Chance U is excellent, actually. I think it's a really good documentary. And this one did pretty much the same thing. The Wrestlers is a docuseries showcasing Ohio Valley Wrestling, which is known during the 2000s, which, because of that, it has produced all-time great talents. Specifically, John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Batista, and Randy Orton. And Shelton Benjamin. I'm throwing Shelton Benjamin in there because he's all-time great talent to me. But those five are the core five of OVW who came out of that developmental system and can credit it for getting them going within the wrestling business in a lot of different ways. So that is the significance of OVW and why it still has such great name value. But the other thing about OVW as well is, in a lot of ways, it's kind of the last of the Mohicans. And when I say that, I mean it is one of the last territory-based wrestling promotions. And when I say territory-based, I mean, as a lot of y'all know, wrestling during the 80s, before the 90s, really, so the 80s, 70s, and before then, was territory-based. So every region, every state, maybe just depends on where you're at, has their own sort of localized wrestling promotion, which was known as a territory. They go through that region, they go to different places within that region, but they typically just stay within that region, which is territory. Once again, it comes back to the name. And that is what OVW is. That's what it's presented as they were talking about on the ducumentary. They have had live television every week in Louisville, Kentucky, which is where OVW is based out of. During the documentary, they're approaching 1,500 episodes. So you could do the math on how long they've done weekly television. But that is the big part about OVW. It's ran by Al Snow, who is the wrestling person in charge, as you'll see in this documentary. And then it's also owned by a few guys. One by the name of Matt Jones, who is a Kentucky sports radio show host in Louisville. And then the mayor of Louisville, which I didn't even realize this until after watching this, Craig Greenberg. They bought into OVW within the last, I think they said 5 years, and they are the money people. So Matt and Craig are the money people. They're the ones really in charge of paying people, while Al Snow is in charge of the wrestling aspect. And if you don't know who Al Snow was in WWE for a good little while. Very successful within the wrestling industry during his time. Was never like a main event star or anything like that, but he was a notable person because of his head gimmick. His head gimmick. And then also he was a trainer on Tough Enough, for anybody that used to watch that or had seen that in the past as well. He was a lead trainer on that. So Al Snow has a good reputation within the wrestling industry, and he's aligned himself with some people who it seems they really do value and care about OVW. And so I'm not going to do an episode-by-episode breakdown, but just kind of give more of an overall thought of this series. And my overall thoughts, my overall review of this series is that I think that this series does a great job of presenting wrestling in an all-around aspect in a way that's never really been done before. So typically, if you watch a wrestling documentary, it's usually about the wrestlers and how it is that they operate, how it is that they go about the world, and how it is that they live their lives even outside of wrestling. But what this documentary did a great job of was really sit down and explain the concept of wrestling, why it is that people enjoy it, what it is that it's supposed to be showcasing when people are in the ring, but also doing a great job of explaining the creation process of professional wrestling, because there's never been a true documentary where you get to sit down and watch booking meeting or get to see how stories are, figured out, how shows are booked, how they're created. We've never, as an audience, been able to really see that. And this documentary does a great job of explaining the process and showcasing the process and how it works. Throughout it, there were times where you saw Al Snow at these meetings and, people were shooting out ideas. Okay, well, this person beats this person. Well, how's the match supposed to go? Or oh, this is what I'm building towards. Because there was a pretty interesting storyline here between I think the top star in OVW, Hollywood Haley J, and her mother, Amazing Marie, where they pretty much were going up against each other. Hollywood, she turned on her mom, and it turned into this big thing within the show. But seeing the way that creative process came up was very interesting because, like I said, we had never seen that before. Seeing Hollywood come up with an angle for a night where, the mob is supposed to come out and, grab her and get her back into the ring because she's trying to run away. And it's a very interesting thing to watch because, and I watched this documentary the first time because I watched it a few times just to make sure that I had a good understanding of it. And when I watched it the first time, I watched it with my fiance, and I remember that she was asking questions like, well, this doesn't, why is she doing that when she was coming up with that story? And I remember telling her, like, hey, watch it and let it play out, and you'll see what it's supposed to do. And I think after they showed it on screen and showed the actual doing of the story that they came up with, she had an understanding of it, which is a great thing because my fiance is a complete outsider to wrestling. So it made sense. They put everything in a way to where it made sense. So that was the first thing that this documentary that the wrestlers did, was that it really showcased the behind the scene aspect from a booking standpoint and not just a wrestler standpoint or just a profile standpoint. It showcased how the business works, how things are come up with. Another positive thing that I really liked about this documentary, and I think it did a great job of showcasing community aspect of OVW. There was an episode where they went to a poke salad festival, which is something I've never heard of, a poke salad in my life. I've never had it to my knowledge of my life, but they went to a poke salad festival in Harlan, Kentucky, which is a old coal mining town that has, at this point, is nothing more than just a country community in the hills of Kentucky. And they went to this festival, and the thing about this festival that was interesting to me was that OVW runs this festival every year. So it's a tradition for them to go. But also just how the community responds to OVW. Because for me, I don't live in Kentucky, so all these people, for the most part, are new faces to me. I don't have any real attachment to them. I don't feel any type of way. If OVW came to North Carolina right now, to be honest, before watching the documentary, I probably wouldn't even care to go to a show. And that's just being real. But those people in Kentucky, the people at that festival, they had genuine love for OVW. They felt an attachment to OVW. They felt as if OVW was a part of the culture there in Kentucky. And I think that is a great thing. That is something that makes OVW last of Mohicans, because honestly, most wrestling companies, most wrestling promotions, sure, they may be based out of an area, but I don't think that the overall culture of an area really accepts and embraces wrestling companies like I saw within this documentary at this Poke Salad Fest, because there were people from all over Harlan, Kentucky that were there. Matt Jones, one of the owners, he brought his mother to the show. And it seemed like the people there valued the fact that OVW came to their festival, is a part of their culture, and it gives them something to look forward to within this town. This town, like I said before, was an old coal mining town. It's well past its old glory days, but this wrestling show came and it lifted them up. You could tell just within the spirit, within the atmosphere, that it lifted them up. And I enjoyed seeing that. I enjoyed understanding, or getting that clear understanding of why it is such an important thing for a wrestling promotion to build an attachment, if nothing else, to a certain place, because that place will always be able to call it home. And that's something that I really enjoyed and I really liked. And I thought it showcased that excellently throughout this documentary, whether it was this episode where they were at the Poke Salad Festival, or even throughout other episodes, where they were at a brewery one time, or they were at a church, or at a baseball field, or all the different places that they went to throughout this, because it's the way the documentary is shot is showcasing things throughout a summer tour. So they're going from place to place to place. Something else that I really enjoyed about this documentary, and I know I'm rambling because I don't want to give any spoilers. I really want to encourage people to go watch it. So I want to just go through the different things that I enjoyed more so than going episode by episode. But the other thing that I really liked was how it profiled the people throughout this documentary, so that you got an emotional attachment or understanding of not only them within the wrestling space, but them outside of the wrestling space. Some of the wrestlers that they heavily showcased throughout this, like I mentioned before, Hollywood Haley J, her mother, Amazing Marie, a wrestler by the name of Cash-flo, who, from what this documentary says, has been around for a very long time. This is my introduction to him, but he's been around for a very long time. Was a deathmatch wrestler, and settled in Louisville, settled in OVW, and that's home for him, and he is the locker room leader because he is the oldest. He's been around the longest. He's done the most within the business. And so he was profiled as that leader, as that person who is still holding on, still out here doing it, killing it, in the standpoint of OVW, as he's one of the top stars. And it showcased that, but it also showcased the hardships, from him going to different places and making sacrifices to be successful within wrestling. He told a story about how his son was born and he got called to go to the hospital to be there for his wife, and his son was born, and after he had a wrestling show that he had to run, and he went to his wife, said, hey, I got to go do this show and I'll be back. And there was an understanding there. She understood that. And and to me, that was a thing because it showcased the family aspect of wrestling, how hard it is on a family. Wrestlers now, I know now it's not as much as it was before, but wrestlers travel a crazy amount of time throughout the year. I've heard guys from back in the day say they were on the road 300 days a year, which is insane for any sports, any traveling. That's absolutely insane. And it takes a toll not only on the wrestlers, but it takes a toll on their families. They miss a lot of things. They aren't seen in a lot of important moments. And this documentary did a good job of showcasing that through Cash-flo, how Cash-flo told that story and how his wife was saying, hey, I know this doesn't make a lot of money. She said that she knows it doesn't make a lot of money. She's not the richest person in the world, but she knows that this is something that her husband loves and that it brings the best out of her husband. And so she supports it. She does what she can to help it. And that's love right there, man. That's real love. That's real love right there, to know that you got a woman, a wife who understands your dreams may not make a lot of money, but she's there to support it, and she's there to do what she can do to help. And that's love. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate them showcasing that throughout it. And so to go from Cash-flo, let's talk about Shira for a minute, who has done some things in some other promotions like Impact, I think, which they showed some clips from. And he is from India. He is their top sort of baby face star in a way, where he's booked like Goldberg, as Al Snow said. And he's coming all the way from India. He's coming from another country to fill out his wrestling dreams. And he's settled in OVW. He's learning the craft in OVW. And the thing about him that they were talking about was how the sacrifices that he's had to make, leaving another country where he said he was a big star, leaving his family behind, and coming to OVW, not making a lot of money, but still having to send money to his family, still having to support his family, still have to be the main, I don't even want to say the main breadwinner, because I don't think he necessarily said, he didn't come out his mouth and say it, but in a lot of ways be one of the main financial sticking points for his family, he was able to do that. Even with OVW, he was still able to make that work, still able to manage that, and just showcasing how focused, how committed he was to becoming the best wrestler that he could be. And I think that's huge because that shows what it's like coming over from international. There's a lot of international influence in pro wrestling. Sometimes, oftentimes we focus on the big name stars from whether it's Japan or the UK. We focus on them, but there's a lot of other guys and girls in between who come from other countries, who sacrifice leaving their families, who sacrifice having to give money back to their families once they get here. But they're still here to make this dream work. And that's what I respect the most about Sheer, and that's why I appreciate the story that they told about him throughout this, because he also got injured at one point. And I think that was big because, within the wrestling space, we don't ever get to see when someone gets injured, what happens? How does that change a story? How do they have to work around that injury within that story? And that showcased that as well within it because, he got hurt in a match against, of all people, James Storm, which his booking rate is only $600. Just letting people know, just in case you want to book James Storm. And I'm not laughing because of James Storm, because I like James Storm as a wrestler, but $600, that doesn't sound like a lot. I envision James Storm booking costing a lot more than that, but still, all the same, Sheer was able to come to a different country and establish himself. And I think there's big things ahead for him. In all honesty, I don't know how old he is, but look-wise, he got it. In ring, he got it. The mindset, he got it. I think he really just needed a chance. And I look forward to seeing the future of Sheer after this documentary because I think he is going to be somebody who, just like Hollywood Haley J, who I'm about to mention as well, I think is going to really, really benefit from this documentary, really benefit from the look of it, really going to benefit from the future of it. And I look forward to seeing it, man, because he seems like a real good human being, if nothing else. He seems like a good human being in a business where sometimes it is a crapshoot. I ain't going to lie to you. It really is. So now let's talk about Hollywood Haley J and Amazing Marie, who in a lot of ways Hollywood was the main sort of wrestling character throughout this because I think she is probably the biggest star that OVW has. And if she's not, she was at least portrayed that way. She is a young woman who had a rough time in her life coming up, dealt with a lot of different things. Her mother dealt with a lot of different things raising her. And now they're in OVW together. Her mother is more of behind-the-scenes agent type. Hollywood, obviously, is the wrestler. And the thing that I found really fascinating about this documentary, especially with these two specifically, is how they tied in the storyline on TV that they were having at the time where they were going against each other and really emphasized the realness of the story and really tried to blend that story on the wrestling program TV with the story they were trying to tell in the documentary. And I'll explain what I mean when I say that. So, like I said before, Haley J and her mother, Amazing Marie, they had a lot of issues coming up. Marie, she talked about spending time in jail from selling drugs and having her children young and finding wrestling as kind of that outlet for her, that place for her where she felt whole, and so she talked about how there were times where she had to move her kids. There were times where, she didn't have a lot of money, and that's what led her to sell drugs. But she talked about how it put a strain between the relationship between her and her daughter, Haley J. And her daughter confirmed the strained relationship just in her telling stories of her growing up, telling stories of how she ended up in OVW because she said she lived in some bad environments. And, she's also a mother, Haley J is. So it's a lot going on between these two. But I really did enjoy how the documentary tied together their story on television to their real lives, because it is pretty tied together. Anytime you do a family against family type storyline within wrestling, I always believe that there are some elements of truth within whatever promos are being said. And a lot of that was used here. And I think it was really good how they showcase not only the family dynamic between those two and how it's affected them, but they utilize that in a way to where it emphasizes their storyline on TV so much more, and it made the build up to the match have a lot more meaning, in my opinion. It made me care a lot more, and it involved me a lot more just because I knew the backstory from them both outside of the ring. Once they utilized that on television, they showcased those promos that they did for OVW TV within this documentary. It made things a lot better. It made me care a lot more. I ain't gonna lie to you. I felt more like, oh, snap, this is a good little story here, you know? So yeah. So those in terms of the wrestler highlights, those are probably the ones that I liked the most. The one thing I did hate about the Haley Jade part was, she dealt with a domestic incident at the end, and yeah, that really sucked. And hopefully everything is figured out there. I know that she got a WWE trial not too long ago, or at least was called to Florida to have a shot at one. And so hopefully everything works out for her. She's young. I think she has a lot of potential though. She just got to get her attitude and her mind right, to be honest with you. Like, they was catching her outside smoking weed at the job and smoking weed before matches. It was a rough little thing there, but once she get older, mature a little bit, get her mind right, she'll be straight. She'll be all right. Haley J, she'll be all right. So yeah, those are in terms of the rest of the highlights that I really want to document. And then the last part of it that I really wanted to document and talk about and give praise for before I close out this episode is the almost war between the wrestler / wrestling fan and the outsider, and how big of a beef, how deep of a beef that really seems to be. So throughout this thing, like I said before, the company is owned by Matt Jones and Craig Greenberg, two totally non-wrestling people. Like I said, Greenberg is the mayor of Louisville, and Matt, he is the Kentucky sports radio host. And so neither one of them have a real connection to wrestling. However, throughout this thing, there's a constant struggle between Matt and the wrestlers, including Al Snow, where Al Snow seems to have in his mind how he sees wrestling, as he has the experience, the know-how, and has done it forever, while Matt Jones also feels like, hey, this is about making money. This isn't just about the wrestling part of it. It's also about making money. And there was a constant struggle between the two. And in all honesty, it made me look at certain things a little differently. It made me understand, okay, this is why certain things are done the way that they're done. And why I can't get as mad at WWE or AEW for doing certain things anymore. Because sometimes they just have to happen to make money, straight up. And, seeing the way it was portrayed on TV, how Matt had a complete breakdown in one episode that led to something very, very severe. It showcased to me that there is a constant push and pull between both sides. And I don't really ever think we're going to get a resolution between both sides. And I'm not even talking about in this documentary. I'm just talking about period. Wrestling fans and non-wrestling fans and outsiders, it at some point, this document, and this is the thing I appreciate about this documentary, and I'm really trying to find the right way to say it, because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to say anything that doesn't make all the way sense of how I want to explain this. So y'all bear with me a little bit here, because I want to flesh out this point. The people who are non-wrestling fans who get into wrestling, people who don't understand the wrestling business who get into wrestling, I think the one bottom line that they always know and that they understand is making money. Now, with that being said, the wrestling part of it, I think oftentimes is so catered and geared to just a niche audience that the making money part gets lost. Now, do I think that Al Snow was putting together stories in OVW to not make money? No, I don't. I think everything Al Snow came up with, all the stories of him and the team put together, I completely understand why it is that they would do that. Because from the wrestling standpoint, it makes sense. From the wrestling standpoint, you're showcasing the best. You're making sense, and you're coming up with these clear and concise stories. But at the same time, sometimes they just don't make money. And that's where people like Matt Jones was really stuck on. Was like, hey, you're doing these things. They're not making any money. But we have to figure out ways to make money. So we have to do a Kentucky versus Louisville thing. Where for Matt, he was like, hey, this is going to be big. People are in the area in which we dwell. They're going to really like this. But Al Snow was like, well, the internet fans are going to like this. You know, the people who watch on the internet. And that's the overall point that I'm trying to make, is that oftentimes within this wrestling space, we're so focused on the internet wrestling fans. We're so focused on the niche core audience of professional wrestling that the audience of either A, lapsed fans, B, loyal fans who will check something out just because someone recommends it, those type of fans are always lost within these conversations of wrestling, which, once again, I understand, because at the end of the day, if you are in a certain niche, you have to gear towards a fan of that niche. But oftentimes I do think that something like wrestling specifically, people can not be into it, but will be willing to check it out, because to a certain degree, it is violence on TV. Whether we want to talk about how fake or how real it is, we can have that argument all day. I don't even think it's worth having that argument. But at the end of the day, people will check it out because it's people fighting, and it's people fighting straight up. People fighting is a billion-dollar industry, whether it's real, fake, or somewhere in between. And that's just kind of one of those things. And that was something that was showcased throughout this documentary, is just how people from within the wrestling space are, and they look at the wrestling space compared to those who don't. Where those who don't, they understand, hey, we have a ceiling here, you know, with OVW especially. There's a ceiling with OVW. Instead of us trying to reach the pinnacles of our competition, of our biggest competition in WWE or AEW, why not just touch base on the markets that we can? And if nothing else, we can be an alternative for those who are willing to participate and be a part of this alternative, which I respect. I respect both opinions. I respect both sides. And this docuseries did a great job of showcasing that throughout it. And just how they was treating poor Matt, man. The first 3 episodes, I hated Matt. I was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, you being a complete asshole to these people. You don't understand how to interact with these people. And after he had his breakdown and things started to shift a little bit, I felt a lot differently about him. I felt like, if nothing else, I think his intentions were always good. I don't think he was ever trying to hurt or harm the OVW business. I think his whole thing was, hey, look, we just got to make money, and we got to figure out the best ways to make money, because y'all, this company, this ordeal is bleeding me dry, which is something else that we learned, was how much it costs to produce weekly wrestling. Had never thought about that in my life until they said it costs like $30,000, which lets me know, hey, if I'm ever going to produce wrestling, never let it be live on a weekly basis. But yeah, it's crazy. But all in all, I think this documentary was brilliant. I think it was done very, very well. And I think that whether you're a wrestling fan or you're not, I think this is something that you should check out, because it's very in depth, and it gives a lot of good information on how the wrestling business works. It gives good information on how it works to just be an entertainment, period. And I think that is why you should watch this documentary. The Wrestlers, it is on Netflix, 7 episodes. It's a good watch. It's a quick watch. It'll go by pretty quickly. And anybody can watch it and pick up on it and get an understanding of it very, very quickly. Like I said, I watch it with my fiance. She only watches wrestling with me when I force her to sit down. I don't even watch it. Oh, she only sits down and watches it with me, so she doesn't have a real understanding of wrestling. But I do believe that when she did sit down and watch this docuseries, she started to develop an understanding. Although she was asking questions throughout certain periods and certain episodes, I think me telling her, hey, just sit down and watch, just keep watching. She saw the way things played out, and she had a real good understanding of it. And so if she has a good understanding of it, I know that you can as a wrestling fan or as not. So please check out The Wrestlers on Netflix. That is my review of it. And yeah, I'm very excited about them doing another one. I hope that they do another one. I hope that they turn this into something where they not only just showcase OVW, but they showcase tons of other different promotions, because I think there's a story to be told in a lot of different wrestling promotions out there. You know, look at a company like GCW. I think there's a great story to be told there. You know, especially with someone like Nick Gage and his background, me knowing his background from Dark Side of the Ring. You know, the NWA, MLW, the countless different promotions I think they could do this with, and it would be successful, and people will really enjoy it. People will really like it. So I hope that they continue to do these in the future. And yeah, that's the Wrestlers. That's the review. Thank y'all, as always, for tapping into Broadcast Wrestling. Like I said, this is the last formal sit-down. Every Sunday, we're going to sit down and talk to y'all episode. Going forward, it is going to be more so YouTube-based, and I'll continue to put my commentary audio on the Spotify feed and allow people to enjoy it that way they want to enjoy it. But in terms of that, everybody, please go subscribe to the YouTube at Broadcast Wrestling. And yeah, I look forward to the continuation of this journey. Like I said, this is a wrestling journey, so things are going to change. Things are going to be thrown out there. This isn't like a set, I got to do a pot. Nah, this is definitely a journey. So certain weeks I may feel one way, certain weeks I may feel other. But all in all, I want this platform, like I've continued to say throughout every episode of this joint, I want this to be a platform where people get to see the best of wrestling, and people get to see, if nothing else, get to see something that they can really enjoy through the wrestling space. And that is what I'm here for. And that is what this brother is going to do, continue to do, and get that content to you all. So please be sure to follow us on social media at Broadcast PW on Instagram and Twitter. If you want to follow any non-wrestling content, at Broadcast Network, spelled just like the name, BRODCAST Network on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok as well. And subscribe on YouTube also. But yeah, y'all say y'all request for wrestler reviews and all the other good stuff, and I'll get to work on that. And I appreciate y'all, as always, for watching, listening, and being patient with your boy. I know the last couple weeks I ain't been around. Things have been busy. Life happens, and when life happens, you sometimes have to take a break and regroup. And it's a blessing in disguise. So I'll catch y'all later. Y'all stay safe. Y'all have a good week. It's been your boy, Brody. Thank y'all for tapping into Broadcast Wrestling. Y'all have a good week. Y'all stay blessed, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace.